Yo, we all know that Chad Daybell loves to talk, loves to write, loves to visit the portal and report back, okay? Kind of like this.
He's very optimistic.
It was very optimistic for you, or he's very optimistic it could happen?
He's very optimistic for both of us.
He doesn't know his own project timeline.
He said, stick with it.
And the people are like 3 months out.
They hungered for each other, and he leaned forward and fulfilled a promise he had made to her a few days earlier. He gently kissed her tender lips, and the same heavenly electricity filled his entire body. The passionate magic they had felt many centuries earlier came surging back powerfully. James moved to the couch, and Elena straddled him effortlessly, as if they had done this thousands of times before. She fit perfectly on him, and they pressed their loins tightly against each other. They were still fully clothed, but the intensity of the intimacy was undeniable.
I'm never eating pork loin again after this whole debacle, okay? Chad is back at it again, y'all. He is writing the letters. His daughter Emma is publishing them. She's also taken to Twitter and this, that, and the other. So what we are going to do is we're going to review said letters. Now, the first letter we're going to read in its entirety, except for his little book club and his little, mixtape part of it, okay? He does book suggestions at the end of it, as well as like music suggestions. Okay, so we're going to read the first one so you catch the vibe, and then we're just going to talk about the other letters and maybe, go to certain excerpts, things of this nature. So you're going to want to buckle up. You're going to want to get your whatever kind of cup, because you're going to need it for today's video.
Hey, 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 welcome to the Sofa Squad, sipping from the cup at hey.
Now hold on everybody, let's do a quick sofa sidebar now. Keep in mind, ain't no cop, ain't no doctor, ain't no lawyer, ain't no therapist, ain't none of that fancy credentialed stuff, okay? Only credentials we got up in here is my sass, and this sofa. Now keep in mind also, I'm just giving my opinions on very public information, so do your own research, come to your own opinions, and drop them off in the comment section. And while you're down there, if you do like what you see here at the Sofa Squad, drop a little like, drop a little comment, drop a little share. It helps the channel out immensely. Now let's get edition. Hello Sofa Squad, and welcome back to the sofa. That's a sofa. This is a Paul. I hope y'all are doing well. My name is Paul. If you're new to the channel, if you're not new to the channel, my name's still Paul. Okay. Now, you already heard what we're talking about today, so let's just go ahead and dive into that first letter. I will be going into my Chad voice. It's almost impossible for me not to do it when I'm reading Chad Daybell. Now, Chad's voice to me when he talks is very much based around like, I've seen everything in life and I'm not impressed. I've given up. There's no hope. So just, work with me on this. Hello, my friends. This is Chad Daybell, writing to you from my cell in Idaho's maximum security institution. This is the first of several letters I'll send. I want to thank everyone who sent me cards and letters while I've been incarcerated. Your kind words of support have really helped me, and I cherished each one. I arrived here at the prison in June 2024, and I suppose you could say I've settled in. As for death row itself, I won't be sharing details about my daily schedule or information about my fellow inmates. As the newest arrival on death row, it isn't my place to talk about such things. It really is a different world in here, but I'm surviving, and I spend a lot of time working on my upcoming appeals. I express my gratitude to each of you who have been part of my life. While I was in the Fremont County Jail, I spent thousands of hours in an isolation cell, and I wasn't allowed to have a clock, and it often felt like time stood still. During those challenging days, I would reflect on my life, working forward from childhood to more recent years. As memories came to me, I could write down the names of the people who had been positive influences in my life. I felt strengthened as I remembered my extended family members, neighbors, coworkers, school classmates, business associates, church members, and friends I've been privileged to know. You have all enriched my life in so many ways. Sorry, y'all. Okay, we're gonna read normal for a minute because I'm gonna lose it over here, okay? It's not that long of a letter, but you get the vibe, okay, right? So, I'm using this method to share my story because I want you to receive it uncensored, unfiltered, raw. Just joking. He didn't say raw. Directly from me. I am aware of how I've been portrayed in the media. Frankly, those portals of me, I said portals, is portrayals. How have we arrived here, y'all? How have we arrived back here? This is just, I can't. Frankly, those portrayals of me are unrecognizable. I'm not the man the media had created. I'm not a cult member who should be feared. I'm not a conspirator or a killer. I've never been. I'm a father, a grandfather, a husband, a son, a brother, and a friend with a firm faith in the gospel of Jesus Christ. And gosh darn it, people like me. He didn't say that, but people like me part. Okay, so I have recently been able to have a few in-person visits with several of my family members, and those have been wonderful. I will always be grateful for the unconditional love and support of these family members have given me. When people find out that my relatives have visited me, they usually ask them, how has he changed? My relatives give the same response. He hasn't changed. He's the same Chad we always knew. People are surprised by that answer after hearing a different story for so long. I am still the quiet, gentle person you all know. I have always been a peacemaker, even now in prison. I have never caused anyone's death and never conspired to commit such acts against anyone. I share in your sadness, pain, and grief over the deaths of Tammy, Tylee, and JJ. I don't have all the answers, even now, but I am grateful a more complete story will be shared during my appeals process. During my court trial, I followed my attorney's advice to sit quietly, not to smile, and not show any emotion as evidence was presented. And I know that is standard protocol for defendants in the courtroom, but I realize now that it made me appear to be cold and uncaring, which is really the opposite of who I am. I assure you my heart was breaking many times throughout the trial, and there were moments, well, I couldn't hold back the tears, especially as I saw and heard family members suffering the same feelings of anguish that I was experiencing. A key purpose of these letters is to share with you what I had hoped would have been explained in court. I will strive to make each letter informative and worth your time. I fully realize many people will never change their negative opinion of me. In this age of social media, podcast, and the merging of the mainstream media with law enforcement, very few defendants are portrayed in a positive way. All I can hope for is that these letters can begin to generate feelings of healing, reconciliation, and understanding. Thanks again, my friends, for the many ways you have helped and inspired me throughout my life. So that's that one. Like I said, we're not going to do his bookshelf. He then goes into a thing about a book he suggests with a sponsored link nonetheless, and a little video of, like, I call it Chad's mixtape. So here's the thing. So he's saying he's doing an appeals process, that he's never harmed or killed anybody, and that the real story is going to basically come out, and that he was in anguish and agony during court, but, you know, what's his name told him not to do that. First of all, what this is giving to me, it's giving, I still want to be a cult leader, I still want that attention, and I'm trying to cultivate a new following, right? Especially as we get into some of these other letters here. So, you know, I'm not a cult member, I'm not this, I'm not that, I've never harmed the kids. Everyone involved in this story has never done anything wrong, right? Lori didn't hurt those kids, Chad didn't hurt those kids. Now again, I said this in the live chat in the podcast channel that we did about these, that it's my belief, and again, like, and I said it this way too, remove any bias, remove any like emotion or whatever. If you were Chad or Lori, it only makes sense to blame Alex as much as you can, even though evidence shows otherwise, right? For two reasons. Number one, you're trying to get out of prison, whatever, appeals, whatever they're trying to do. But number two, to like save face, okay? Because I believe that Chad for sure hands-on killed these people, right? Like, and Alex was there to help him. So I think Lori was more behind the scenes, like she knew what was going on, but like she wasn't physically there when the kids were killed, maybe. But that's a whole other thing. So, you know, Chad's sitting here like, oh, I want the real story to come out, I want this and that. And it's like, well, honey, that's not really how this works. So this is pandering to an audience. This to me is almost like I want to go on a book tour again. Chad and Lori both think they are biblical figures of some sort, okay? The narcissism is off the rails with these two. So that's where, when you get into stuff like this of, it's really for this, and my heart was breaking, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 no. And I believe that Emma, and I don't know who else, if you're still following very close to this case, you know, I think Emma is definitely like maybe a son too. They're drinking that juice, right? They want to spread the gospel, clearly. I mean, where do you think these are coming from? Okay, so let's move on to letter 2. Now, I'm not going to read the whole letter. What we're going to do is just talk about it, and I've pulled out a couple of excerpts that I want to go into. So the letter 2 is basically the Tammy and Chad origin story, okay? How they met, what Tammy was like, him falling in love with her, you know, And so I'm going to put this first thing up to kind of summarize the first part. And you'll see here it says, this letter is devoted to Tammy. I loved her, I still do. She was my life partner. It goes on. We were married for nearly 30 years and I've always sought to keep her safe and protected. She was the anchor of my life and I never considered harming her. Well, pretend, I say, take the murder out of it, okay? So we're pretending that that didn't happen, okay? And we're taking the statement and then we're going back to that. You were cheating on her with Lori, okay? That is harming her. Now I know he's probably specifically saying, you know, killing her, whatnot, okay? But the evidence shows otherwise. So this whole little dribble about let me tell the story, this, that, and the other, this is how he wants people to see him, of like, oh, you know, he's humanizing her, number one, which, okay, great, so that's what you do, but also their relationship to make it out like it wasn't something. And it makes me wonder if Chad has had any kind of moment in prison of sitting there and being like, my God, was it worth it? Look at where I'm at now. You know, if he's able to sit there and just, and have that self-reflection. You know, Lori, a little miss thing with her Skittles makeup, she came into his life and they both just went down this, where we're at now. So he goes on and on in this. I'm going to skip down to another part here towards the end, and I'll put up on the screen. And he says, Tammy had increasingly severe health issues in the final months of her life, but very few people knew about them. Continue, she would put on a brave smile in public and act as if it was nothing was bothering her. But even those of us who knew about her health struggles never expected her to pass away so suddenly, and her death has somewhat overshadowed the remarkable woman she was. She was strong, yet so delicate. Now, here's the thing with this, and again, remember, he has kids that are still visiting him and stand by his side. Now, if you follow the case, you'll know, in my opinion, his family, and I'm talking about him, the kids and all that, had zero respect for Tammy. The way they talked of her after her death and acted like she was this drama queen, this, that, and the other, she was so sick, they just immediately joined Chad's narrative or whatever. Now, another thing on that note, that, you know, when we see these cases where children are involved, and the children are, like, look at Barry Morphew's situation, things like that, right? The children are the children of the murderer. You're then left with the struggle of, I've already lost one parent. If I sit here and say, let's use this for example, Dad, aka Chad, killed Mom. Well, where does that leave you? Now, this has this whole other cult thing going to it as well, right? So that's another component, but just put that to the side for a minute. Just the level of, if I admit that, yep, Dad killed Mom, well, I either forgive and we put that in a compartment, we don't talk about it, or whatever the case is, right? What I'm saying is, I think oftentimes it's too much for someone to even comprehend. And at the end of the day, it's like your parents. So you're just like, they would never do that, right? Now you bring the religious cult stuff into this. Okay, that's a whole other ballpark. Now, letter 3 continues on with more Tammy and Chad lore and about, you know, moving and getting settled and starting this and starting that. But letter 3 goes into more of him creating a narrative around Tammy's health. Now, if you recall, during trial, during the thing, even the kids, she was this very sickly woman, had all these issues. Now, people outside of the media bubble did not speak of this. It was, like she was, you know, running around like day before, like what's up, right? This is what I think Chad is so desperate to get out. And it's fascinating because we saw Lori do this in her trials where she represented herself. We see numerous people, Sarah Boone, I mean, you just name them off, right? Nick Casotis, possibly Brian Walsh coming up, Anthony Top, Donna Adelson. They're convinced if they can tell their story, that they can talk their way out of it, right? If I just get this out here. And so this also, to me, with Chad talking about his appeals and whatnot, plays into that. Okay, so Chad creating this narrative and really doubling down and really giving all these examples of Tammy's health. And I'm just going to put some bullet points on the screen and we'll go over those. Okay, so you see the first one. It says, first, Tammy had lengthy colds and prolonged coughing fits. Second were her lethargy and overall lack of energy. The third reason for concern were her swollen joints and bloating and her abdomen that she initially tried to brush off as water retention. Quote, around that same time, Tammy and my son attended a health wellness fair. The nurse who examined Tammy was bothered by how swollen Tammy's legs were and that she had developed varicose veins. And then the last one here, the fourth cause of concern was a series of fainting spells. Tammy felt her equilibrium was being affected as well as her stamina. Now, another thing that he goes into to try and double down is that, you know, she went to go to the doctor, she was into holistic health, this, that, and the other. Now, here's the thing. If you go along that route and you look at, like, historically, I think one just happened, I can't remember, it's up north somewhere, and I don't remember what it was, where a woman, I don't know if she was Amish or what she was, but I felt like it was something like that, where there's basically two bodies, and she was like, one of them's a kid, and I can't remember 100%, but what I'm saying is there's a recent case going around the news about it. If you know, drop in the comment section, help remind me here. But this whole narrative of like, oh, well, we're going to pray it away, basically, okay? Because for Chad, at least, that would look better than this of he killed her, right? Which is what I think him and Alex suffocated her, personally. So I don't think that Tammy was this sick or whatever. Now, she could have been into this holistic stuff and whatever. Okay, great, fine, dandy. But Chad is trying to spin this narrative like, oh, yeah, she's like getting like super sick. Nobody knew. Like, we tried to get her to the hospital, but like this is happening, that's happening. She could barely pick up a pencil off the ground. You know, I mean, it's really, really bad. And this is where you see the spin on these letters, right? I said this in the live chat. There's a grift in here, okay? It's what's the grift? There's several going on. Number one, he wants an appeal. Number two, possibly making money off of the links to the books that they're suggesting. Number three, controlling the narrative. Because at minimum, he can look at it like he's like some kind of like, you know, prophet in jail. Look at Jody Hildebrand. She thinks that she's right where she belongs, right? This is just part of the journey, okay? Part of the journey. But now I'm ready to get back out and keep on going. A cult is gonna cult, right? And this is what this is. He's realigning. He's probably trying to get another, I don't know what you would call it, fan base, member, whatever. And so he's trying to explain this away. And hey, even better if he can create a narrative for his appeal and get out. Now let's finish out letter 3 with like this little excerpt up here I'm gonna put. It's just an example. So you'll see here it says Tammy's first major fainting incident happened after she put the animals away for the night. And she blacked out and crashed forward onto the asphalt, injuring her wrist. She said her wrist might be broken. I urged her to go to the emergency room, but she refused. She took an herbal remedy instead, and the pain went away in a few days. That summer, during one of the ceremonies at the LDS temple, Tammy fainted, collapsed backwards, and then threw up all over the front of her dress. She was very embarrassed as the temple's medical team rushed into the room to care for her. So this is what I'm talking about. He's trying to align this with this to basically make it look like we didn't know what was happening and she was clearly sick and passed away in her sleep like he did. Okay, 100% do not believe that. Again, go back to the first letter. I never wanted to harm Tammy. Why is Lori buying wedding rings when you're still married? Answer me that riddle, okay? At bare minimum, pretend Nerder was not involved in this. It was simply an adulterous situation. That's hurting Tammy, okay? That's the part that boggles me. And I think some of it too was like with the church, they didn't want to like, we can't get divorced. And I could be wrong on that, right? But I think that was a part of it. It will always boggle my mind that the next sane thought process for them is, oh, we'll just kill him. If it's going to look bad to divorce, why in heaven's name would murder be the next thing? Now, I understand you're probably like, well, Paul, they think they're going to get away with it and they can just go on their merry way. I get that, okay. But I still have tons of questions because, you know, at the end of the day, it's like, but then they know that. You see what I mean? Like, they know what they did. And that just goes further to show they just don't care. Okay, so letter 4 is all about him and the LDS church. And the grift to me is basically him trying to be like, nay, boo boo, I still consider myself a member. But he's talking about, you know, his missions that he did when he was younger and this and that and the places he went to. You know, one thing with Chad is, and if you've read his books, like the One Foot in the Grave, we read that years ago, Chad likes to make up stuff, okay? And it's hard to tell what is true and not true with him, obviously, okay? Like, look at what's going on. But this letter just very much gives that vibe of, you know, we went to a gang-ridden area, we were really afraid, and blah, 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 but I was praying really hard, and this, that, and the other. And he goes on and on and on. Towards the end of the letter, he'll explain why he said that. I'm gonna put this excerpt on the screen here. And it says, why did I share this experience? Because from that day on, I had been completely devoted to the LDS church. I have served many different callings and was asked to assist with several church disciplinary councils that were held for members who wanted to clear up misdeeds in their lives. So this is one thing that he'll go into, and we'll look at the next little screenshot we put up here, you know, is obviously that church excommunicated him. I can't imagine why, okay? You know, just shocker. But what's funny in reading this is how Chad goes on about, like, you know, I don't know who spoke out against me and who did this and who did that. Because remember, one thing that was going on even before the murders took place is this stuff that Chad and Lori were talking to people about. Now, I myself am not part of the LDS faith, so I am not speaking from a place of like, oh, I know that and this, that, and the other, so I'm not trying to put words in, in a community's mouth or this, that, and the other. I'm speaking from a place of like the stuff that we've watched over the years about this. So say Nate Eaton, for example, in his interviews where he's like, I've never heard of this and I've never heard of that, and even Melanie Gibb, like some of the people that really followed them saying like this was like kind of very fringe beliefs that were not looked at very nicely, within the church or whatnot. So my interpretation of it is that before the murders took place, Chad and Lori out here trying to do the 144,000 thing, and they're trying to create like their own little congregation. And they basically have these wild out there ideas that like are way beyond what is acceptable to this church. If you remember April Raymond, I think her last name is, in Hawaii, I think that's where she lives. Lori's friend who Lori went to trying to gather her up for the 144,000, and she was like, this is basically blasphemy, right? Like, what are you talking about? No, I'm not interested in this, go. So even before the murders, now obviously, with the murders, of course the church is going to want to separate themselves from that. The thing is that, and I knew that the LDS and Mormons and all that existed, obviously, but this case for me was the first entry into really learning a lot about that world, that religion, and how everything operated. And I'm sure a lot of people could say the same thing. And so you can only imagine, it doesn't matter what kind of church or religion it is, they're not going to want to be associated with this, but especially because Lori and Chad were so, it was this gray zone where I think a lot of people were like, okay, wait, stop. What does the LDS believe and what does Lori and Chad, like where do we veer off here? Okay. And it was very confusing. And so I'm just like, oh honey, I can 100% tell you why they've like separated themselves. So I'm going to put this next little screenshot up and we'll read through it some. So it says, it is true, I'm currently excommunicated from the LDS church. Sadly, I didn't receive an opportunity to have a compassionate church leader hear my side of the story. Really? I would have happily welcomed a visit from my church leaders during my 4 years in the Fremont County Jail, but no one ever came. Instead, I learned I had been excommunicated through the mail more than a month after the disciplinary council had taken place. Because the deputies would put any mail addressed to me in a big manila envelope and held it until my attorney's next visit, where among the letters were 2 envelopes from my LDS church, stake president, my local leader. I'd had a good relationship with him over the years, and I initially expected these envelopes to contain letters of kindness, support, and encouragement. However, the first envelope had a printed letter informing me a disciplinary council would be held regarding my church membership. The second letter said the council had been held and I had been excommunicated for apostasy. I have still never found out what evidence was presented in the disciplinary council or who testified against me. Now, I had to look up what that word apostasy means, okay? Now, we're going to read the definition where it says, what is apostasy in simple terms, okay? Because we need it simple here at the sofa. Okay, it says, is the formal disaffiliation from abandonment of or the renunciation of a religion by a person. It can also be defined within the broader context of embracing an opinion that is contrary to one's previous religious beliefs. So with Chad, I'm kind of sitting here and I'm like, oh, honey, like you're sitting in jail on multiple murder charges, and he's like, well, I don't know why I didn't get a thing to talk. Hello, right? I can tell you why, but this is what to me blows my mind. And again, I don't know how this works. Y'all might be like,
no, Paul, other people have been accused of murder. They were able to stay in the church.
That could be true. Like, I don't know. But with Chad, because this became such a public face of things and it was so intertwined with that, I felt like any church would have to say, hey, whoa, this is not what we think over here, right? Nope, go away. And I would certainly hope so with the convictions of the murders. And him talking about, well, nobody ever came to hear my side, this and another. Honey, we heard it in court. They were like, well, probably wait. Okay. So Chad's just, upset that he didn't get this chance to speak to church leaders and it didn't go like as it normally should. And again, think about it in these basic terms. Like if the church is seen arriving at the jail, nobody knows why, they're just going to show this there. That could be misread as a sign of support. Like in my opinion, okay, I don't know exactly how it would work. But towards the end of the letter, he's like, for these reasons, I still consider myself a member and I still consider myself this. And that's from like, and there you go. This is him letting them know, well, nanny boo boo, I'm still a member in my mind, trying to take control of that. And I don't know what it's called, but there's that whole theory, like the sour grapes theory of like, well, I didn't want those grapes anyway. They're sour. They wouldn't have been good anyways. I didn't want those. We all do it to some degree, but like this is like an extreme version of it, okay? Let's get to that last letter. So the 5th letter, he goes in for the ask, okay? Let's just call it what it is. He's going to start off talking about, I want to explain 2019, but first, I've got to get you there, okay? He will go into then, of course, near-death experiences. I was like, I knew it. I knew it. Here's the thing. Chad and Lori want to be their own Visions of Glory. Visions of Glory is a book that's like held in high esteem in these like kind of Jody Hildebrandt chat circles. I've been reading it, but it's taken me over a year to do the videos because it's so boring. But it's very much giving the Ghost of Christmas Past, the Scrooge, like, you know, let's go revisit our lives and all that kind of stuff. And to me, with the fifth letter, I was like, oh, here we go. This is what he's doing. This is what he wants to tell you. So he wants to go in and tell you all these near-death experiences. Now, it's my personal belief that what he did is he saw Julie Rowe writing about near-death experiences and somebody else, I can't remember. And this is years ago when he started doing his own books. And he saw that grift and he was like, oh, I want to do that too. And then miraculously, Chad had all these near-death experiences, right? Whether he really believes so or not, I don't know. But it's the direction he went in. And again, this also aligns with him trying to bring people in. You know, let's do the greatest hits of Chad. Let's talk about the near-death experiences. So I'm going to put this one thing on the screen up here. We'll go through it. So it says, I'm eager to explain the events of 2019 to you, but it's very important that I feel I first build a solid foundation of facts. Once these facts and my religious beliefs are properly explained, the events of 2019 will make sense. Okay, like, yeah, right. During my court trial, I was bothered by how simple, well-known beliefs were twisted by the state into sinister, frightening ideas that they repurposed, claiming that ideas were the catalyst for terrible crimes I did not commit. They repeatedly made inaccurate statements in the form of questions, and the witnesses would get into a rhythm of saying yes or correct many times in a row without hesitation. The result was a distortion, I hate that word, of my beliefs, and I think an incomplete picture or half story of what the witnesses actually heard or saw. And unfortunately, my lawyer failed to fill in those blanks on cross-examination. So I guess Chad feels like what he's going to do is do this here to fill in those blanks. Now, again, another thing that I'm just like, wow, I mean, he hasn't changed, right? He still lives in distortion and disbelief and just, you know, I didn't do this. I didn't do this. I didn't do this. And then again, he has to circle it around to his, you know, near-death experiences to tie it all in. Let's put this last thing on the screen and read through it. It says, so I feel it's best to begin by sharing with you my near-death experiences, which have had very significant impacts on my life. There have been 4 times in my life when I've actually died and my spirit has gone into another realm before returning to my body. I was spiritually changed by this experience. I glimpsed another dimension and it had felt like home. I was also better able to receive promptings and impressions that helped me out of danger. As I mentioned earlier, I have died 4 times. So we're just gonna leave it at that. These letters are just Chad being Chad, looking for attention, looking for followers, looking for a grift, looking to explain himself away that he had nothing to do with this, and the other. He and Lori truly are just gone and their minds are mush. They believe all of this nonsense, and unfortunately you can see his kids are just helping, or at least Emma, I'm not sure about the other son, helping along with the delusion, and probably are, you know, significantly in that as well. I don't know them personally, so I can't truly say. That's just my opinion. So that is that. What we'll do is we'll let these go because again, it's just gonna be Chad being Chad, so we might let these build up some and see if there's more blasphemy. I'm very curious to see what his new story is about what happened that night with Tammy, right? Because clearly he's saying it wasn't anything. And he's having to build up this whole foundation to deliver us the here's what really happened. Because again, according to him, I thought she died overnight in her sleep. Or have we not changed that? Or do we feel like we didn't get to sell it hard enough? Time will tell. If you are still watching, I greatly appreciate you. If you could, let me know what you think down in the comment section. This is a big thing right here. I mean, obviously, what do you think of the whole thing? But what do you think he's going to say happened to Tammy? Will it change? Or is he like working us back up to his same excuse? Or does he have a new one? Because if I was him, I would just be saying the same thing. Like, this is what I said at trial. She died overnight. If you change it, then it's just going to show you're making it up, which I believe he's making it up. I 100% believe he killed her. So anyways, let me know in the comment section while you're down there if you could drop off some little pillows and some little sofas for myself, Roscoe and Spirit, Bo and Luke, and you, the Sofa Squad, who makes the channel possible. It wouldn't be here without you, and I greatly appreciate you for it. And until we meet down in the comment section to do all that homework, I'll see y'all soon.
I just wanted to say thank you again for watching the whole video, and also thank you for being part of the Sofa Squad. Special thanks to all the Patreon members, channel members from both of my channels, everybody who likes, shares, subscribes, comments in the comment sections. It helps the channel out so much. Now, don't forget, I do have that other channel, the podcast channel. That's where we go live, we hang out, we talk. We have kind of sort of a schedule, but just be sure and check it out. I'll put it up here on the screen. And then, like I said in the beginning of the video, if you want to follow me and Roscoe go on the Instagram. Go on, check it out. It's right here on the screen again. But once again, thank you very much. I really appreciate you being part of the Sofa Squad, and I'll see you in the next video.
Hey, welcome to the Sofa Squad. Sipping from the cup that hey, come laugh with the Sofa Squad. Can't roll my damn eyes hard enough.